Hey, how you doing? Hope you all are doing great. As you seen in the thumbnail, in this video, we are gonna see, imagine Naruto had Superman's heat vision and Rasengan. This is part 1N. And before getting into video, I request you to check the author of this fanfic, and show some love and support. Name of the story is The Hokage of the League by Fun to Know. Do check it out. All details in description. And if you want next part of this series, please leave a like, share, and consider subscribe. Let's get into the video. Also check out Patreon for uncensored spicy content. Link in description. The chirping of birds and the soft rustling of the wind is what the young man known as Naruto Uzumaki awoke to. His eyes squinted as the sun beamed down his face. Groggily he stood up and blocked his eyes as his vision was becoming focused and out of its blurry state, observing the unfamiliar surroundings. The area he was full of trees, so he assumed he was in a forest. But it was none he recognized. It felt like he just had gotten over the hugest hangover of his life, even though he had a high tolerance to alcohol because of the QB 9 tails. Then it hit him. The events of the Fourth Shinobi War and his battle against Madara and Obito alongside Kakashi, Guy, and Killer Bee. Madara and Obito had summoned the incomplete Rsion of the Jubi 10-tailed beast and were dead set on completing the Moon Eye plan. Even though the Jubi was incomplete, it was still bigger, faster and stronger than Kurama and Gyuki together. The battle only became harder when the Jubi evolved into its second state. However, with the arrival of the Alliance and Naruto bestowing his chakra to most of the forces, they managed to successfully sever Madara and Obito's control over the Jubi. However, that's when things went sour as Madara began to fight more seriously, unleashing his perfect Susanoo and all the powers of his Rinnegan, Obito tried to regain control of the Jubi. Naruto had never seen anything so powerful since the Biju themselves. Madara had begun to decimate their forces easily, but Naruto had gone full Biju again and engaged him in combat again while the allied forces attempted to halt the Jubi. It was a long and painful battle with Naruto and Madara tearing up the entire surrounding area in what could become the second valley of the end. Naruto had momentarily been defeated when Madara used both his perfect Susanoo with Mokuten to weaken him, but thankfully Hinata got him to safety long enough for him to reactivate his Biju mode and resume his fight again. The battle went on for a long time until something unexpected happened and Naruto had somehow managed to unlock the legendary Dujutsu Eye technique. The Rinnegan Samsara Eye. Though it is nearly forgotten, the Uzumaki clan were distant relatives of the well-known Senju clan, who were direct descendants from the Sage of Six Paths himself. Also known as the man who created ninjutsu and the ninja system. Naruto didn't know exactly how he managed to unlock the eyes that the Sage and Nagato had. Maybe thanks to the Biju for giving him parts of their chakra it combined with Kurama, which unlocked it. Perhaps his latest bond with Kurama had some additional effect to him, or maybe it was the late Sage lending him his power to finally end the war and bring true peace to the land. Whatever reason, Naruto accepted his newfound power and used it to turn the tide of the war into their favor. With his newfound abilities, his training in his clan's infamous Fuinjutsu sealing techniques, and the QB's help, Naruto managed to reseal the Jyabi 10 tails back into the demon statue and send it back on the moon where he original Sage of Six Paths entombed the Jubi. With the Jubi now resealed for good, Naruto was able to defeat Madara Uchiha. Seeing as how their plans had crumbled before them, Obito Uchiha orchestrated a plan of revenge against the young blonde ninja. Using the last chakra that he could conjure, Obito ensnared the surprised Naruto into his Mangekyo Sharingan's Kamui technique. Naruto for his strength and stamina was too exhausted from his continuous fighting and lack of chakra to escape the space-time. All of the Alliance shinobi arrived just in time to see Naruto being pulled into a small swirling wormhole. Much to the horror of anyone who was remotely close to the blonde ninja. Obito, seeing his success in enacting his revenge upon Naruto, gave a final smirk before dying from his own wounds and chakra exhaustion. Everyone from the shinobi world would remember this day, for it was both the beginning of peace to spread across the elemental nations now that all the shinobi had aligned with one another. And also one of its darkest for the loss of one of the greatest shinobi to ever live. Many mourned and celebrated their victory and Naruto's death. Little did everyone know, Naruto had not died. but had been transported into another dimension. For a moment Naruto fell into a pit of despair at the thought of not being able to ever see his loved ones again. Iruka, Hinata, Ba-chan, Sakura-chan, Kakashi-sensei, I'll never be able to see them again. Single quote. For the first time since he had heard of Jiraiya's death, Naruto cried silent tears of sorrow. He felt alone, and cursed Obito for getting one final shot at him that now left him with no one. He felt the pain beginning to grow as he recalled his closest friends that he'll never see again. Kakashi-sensei had been by his side along with Guy before the rest of their forces arrived to aid them in their fight. He would miss seeing him arrive late and mentioning one of his stupid and unbelievable stories of why he was late. Tsunade Ba-chan was as close to him as Jiraiya was and was like a grandmother to him. After the death of Hiruzen he had dreamed of becoming her successor and replacing her as Hokage. When she decided to step down and hand her position over to him. She was one of the people he didn't know what had happened to during the war along with the other Kage. The fact Madara had joined Obito in the fight against him and had said that the 5 Kages were not alright had clearly indicated that he had defeated them and most likely killed them. Naruto could have used Sage Mode to see if Ey were still alive, but he couldn't since he was still in the middle of the fight and also because he was afraid to find out what happened to them. He was afraid he'd find out she and Gaara really did die against Madara. Sakura-chan he would miss a lot. He had failed her in the past to bring Sasuke back and had continued failing in that ever since, and now he wouldn't be able to complete that promise. He'd never see her again to make things right. Iruka he'd miss a lot. He was like the older brother he wished he had. It always made him think what would have happened if his parents were never killed because of Obito. Maybe they would have had another child and he would have had a sibling. It was something he'd never know for himself. Hinata would be the one he might miss the most. LD still remember how she bravely fought against Pain's Diva Path while he was incapacitated. He especially recalled when she confessed her feelings and told him that she loved him. Never before had Naruto ever heard someone say that to him. She had been the first and it touched him like he never could have imagined. It was why he became so enraged and transformed into a 6 tails when he thought Pain killed her. Because he thought Pain had killed the first person to ever give him true love, the first person to ever confess to him, the first to ever truly seemingly die before his eyes since Sasuke saved him from Haku. During the war when she joined them in the fight and he held her hand to give her his chakra, he had felt her emotions due to Kurama's cloak. He had felt her warmth, her courage, her love him. He had felt all the emotional strength she had from being by his side and he missed her more than he could imagine. It hurt most of all that he was planning to talk to her after tea. He wore about her confession to him where he felt like he actually could return her feelings and want to be with her, but now because of Obito he would never tell her how he felt about her. His depressed ion was broken by the familiar booming voice of the QB 9-tailed fox. Shed your tears, whelp. I doubt any of your friends would want you to be put down like this, especially after you managed to saw the world from Madara and that wannabe imposter of his like you had promised. Naruto nodded, wiping his tears away. Kurama was right, his friends would never want him to wallow like this. Instead Naruto turned his attention to the QB to discuss their current situation. So Kurama, do you know of a way to get back to our dimension? Naruto couldn't help but show a sliver of hope in his voice. Kurama frowned. There could be different ways we could leave this dimension, but the main problem is that there are an infinite amount of dimensions in existence. It could take us an eternity to find the right one. And that's if we're lucky. Plus even if we did find it, I'm not even sure we could get back. Not to mention the possibility that time might flow differently in this world. For we know every day we spend here could be months or years that pass back in our world. That small amount of hope that Naruto held onto was crushed as quickly as it came. He took a moment to collect himself. Taking in a deep breath he exhaled, turning his attention back to the fox. Very well, do you know what dimension we were transported to? Like I said, we were teleported to only one of many dimensions. I don't know which exact one we've been sent to, so it's best if we scout ahead for more info. However, I advise you to keep a low profile for now since we have no idea what we may find here. Naruto nodded, exiting his mindscape, and began extended his senses in search for a high populace of life source that would likely lead to a village, hopefully. Finding a huge amount of life signature. A few miles from his location he sped off towards the source. As he neared the energy source, Naruto spotted what he could only describe as a large collection of buildings. Upon closer inspection, the structures here were enormous, so advanced, even more so than the Yuki no Kuni, land of snow, whose land is said to have possessed some of the most advanced technology in the entire elemental nations. The city was unlike anything he had ever experienced in his time as a shinobi. Everything gave off a nostalgic yet unfamiliar feeling. Naruto decided to go in quietly as he wasn't aware of what dangers this world could provide. When Naruto successfully infiltrated the city, he observed its people from the rooftops of the building. What he was seeing amazed him. The city was unlike anything he had experienced in the elemental nations. Everything felt similar yet so different. Much to his relief, the people here appeared human, but he couldn't sense much if any chakra from them, only the life force that kept them alive. Despite popular belief, Naruto disliked charging head-on into the unknown. It was something he had been forced to learn during the war, where he saw that recall wasn't the best idea lest he unintentionally bring harm to his friends. So he searched for a way to find more intel on this world. In the nearby alleyway, Naruto spotted a middle-aged man who was casually smoking a cigarette with his back leaned against the wall. Naruto smirked as an idea formed in head. He closed his eyes in concentration as he sent chakra into his eyes. When he opened them, gone were his brilliant blue eyes, replaced by purple-colored ones with a unique ripple pattern. The smoking man didn't know what happened next. All he saw was his vision black out before he was caught in a trance-like state. He had been caught in Naruto's genjutsu, illusionary technique. Naruto leapt down stealthily next to the man before calmly putting his hand on his head. Thanks to his newly acquired Rinnegan, it had given Naruto the ability to probe through a person's mind through contact of the head. Although since he had only recently unlocked the Rinnegan, Naruto only managed to learn how to use the Diva path to pull and repel things at the minimal level against Madara and Obito, while using the human path was new to him and therefore takes him a long while to get the information. It was this very path he used to try and defeat Madara by ripping out his soul from his wretched immortal corpse. However, Madara didn't make it easy for him, since Naruto had to find a way to break through his perfect Susanoo and get close to him. It was hard, but eventually he succeeded by knocking away its sword and disarming it, where he fired his strongest tailed beast ball and blew it to bits, leaving Madara exposed. But he had also seized an opportunity and used his own human path to try and rip out Naruto's soul. It became a tug-of-war between the two of them as they both tried to rip the other's soul out while trying to maintain a strong grip on their own souls. Eventually, however, Naruto managed to come out the victor thanks to his experience with chakra tug-of-war that he had with Kurama when he fought against him to gain control of his chakra. With his victory, Naruto defeated Madara by sealing away his soul, and with him gone, Obito was soon defeated as well. Naruto was especially glad that he didn't read his mind, since he didn't want to know what twisted thoughts coursed through that man. This was the second time he was using the human path, and he had to be extra careful so that he didn't end up pulling the man's soul from his body like how he had heard from Shizune when Nagato had done so to her. It was over a good 6 minutes later that he finally managed to gather all the necessary information he was looking for, since not only was it a lot of info to take in, but he was still adjusting to all his new abilities. What he had learned was a lot to take in. Not only was this world's history vastly different from his, but the people here didn't and have never possessed the ability to utilize chakra. Not only that, but apparently this world harbored a collection of super-powered beings, both good and bad, that utilized powers that he never even knew existed. Through the man's memories, he saw people dressed in all sorts of weird costumes. The most common superheroes, as these people referred them as, were two men called Superman from Metropolis and Batman from Gotham. Both were impressive in their own department. They were also like polar opposites. Superman was the yin while Batman was the yang. Superman was the true model of someone who believed in truth and justice, while Batman was someone who lurked in the darkness, using fear against villains. Kurama even approved of the Dark Knight's methods. Naruto, however, liked Superman's methods more. It reminded him of bringing peace through understanding rather than hatred. His planet is definitely different from the shinobi of our world. Humans here are even more pathetic than I thought possible. From what we saw from that flesh bag's mind, I'd say that these people would hardly pose a challenge against us. Except maybe a few. Kurama spoke unimpressed with what he saw. I don't know about that, these people may not have chakra, but from what I've learned in the past, it's best to never underestimate a person, especially when this world's technology far exceeds the shinobi's. The QB gave a low grumble in a reluctant agreement. With that, Naruto disconnected himself from the man's mind and dropped the genjutsu, but not before leaving the area. He also made sure the man wouldn't remember what had transpired. What Naruto needed now was a place to rest for a time. He still was feeling the effects of his battle with Madara and Obito, and he was low on chakra. He managed to find an abandoned apartment that he could safely rest for the night. Before he settled down, he made a few Kage Bunshin's shadow clones to research any more info that would be deemed important that the man didn't have. As soon as he laid down, Naruto passed out from pure exhaustion of the events that transpired. He would figure out a plan of action tomorrow, right after a good night's rest. 3 months later. In the past few months, Naruto had been both familiarizing himself with this world's society and training with his newfound abilities. He made his clones train with his Rinnegan's abilities in a deserted area while he had a few other spare clones research anything important of the planet. Geographical features, technology, language, as well as the villains and heroes. The clones found many of this available information in the public library. Each clone would henge themselves so they could look through the library without disturbances. Though he spent much of his time also working on his father's jutsu, the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. Before the Fourth Shinobi War had started, Tsunade had given him a scroll from his father containing the formula for the jutsu along with his other inheritance that included jutsu from his mother as well. Though there were fail-safes placed on the scroll, so only someone with the Namikaze blood could see its contents. Naruto hadn't had enough time before the war to really put much practice into learning the Just-You. So he couldn't use it in his battle against Madara and Obito, which would have definitely had helped on several occasions. It had taken some time to get used to the technique, especially the instantaneous teleportation part. The scroll didn't mention how disorientating it would be the first few times. He even lost his lunch on several occasions. So far, Naruto preferred to use it for mere transportation, rather than actual combat, not that he's even had a fight to use it in for fighting. He himself was currently in the city that he had first stumbled into. It was a large and popular city known as San Francisco. It had taken some getting used to, but he had learned this country's language, English. This world had a wide variety of languages, but he also learned that much to his surprise. This world had his own land's native language, which they referred to as Japanese. This world's technology had similarities to the shinobi's. While the elemental nations had conventional technology like trains, TV, refrigerators, etc., this world, this Earth, had a higher level of technology superior to the shinobi. The world he was in was known as Earth and had many similar traits compared to his own, but its people seemed to be split into even more factions than the elemental nations. Maybe it was because it was vastly larger compared to his world. Unfortunately for him, the currency here was different, so he had to search for a way to gather more money for some living expenses. That part wasn't too difficult though, as he wasn't the type of person who needn't had the need for conventional things like a car or house. He led a more nomadic lifestyle anyway. Though that didn't mean he wouldn't try to gather money in case he may need some. He found an editor who was willing to publish his sensei Jiraiya's books, the Ika Ika Paradise collection and his personal favorite tales of a gutsy ninja. The books were a major hit as they became a worldwide sensation and ready soon. He was racking in a lot of money that he stored into a spare storage scroll. While his clones studied, the original Naruto continued to train with his new abilities, namely his Dujutsu I technique, the Rinnegan. Though he spent much of his time also working on his father's Just-You, the Hiraishin no Just-You, Flying Thunder God technique. As for his training, he had attained a good more control over his Dojutsu I technique, the Rinnegan, though he had still not achieved full mastery of it. Thanks to the Rinnegan, it gave Naruto the ability to be compatible with all the 5 basic nature transformations: Futon, Wind, Doden, Earth, Kaden, Fire, Suiden, Water, and Raiden, Lightning. Right now he had mastered his original futon element and was proficient in Raiden and Kaden. He was still working on the others. Now he was currently contemplating on what he should do. He could try to become a superhero and protect these people, but he still felt that lingering attachment to his home. Kurama snorted at his container's attitude. Why are you so hesitant? You have the chance at a free start, so take it and get your ass out more in the world. It'll be amusing to see these so-called villains squirm as we beat them to an inch of their useless life, ha ha ha. Naruto's sweat dropped at his tenant's obvious enthusiasm in the enjoyment of others' pain. Kurama, you. No, we're not gonna just go on a killing spree, right? Kurama huffed. Who said anything killing? I was just saying we could beat them up until they can't stand and strike them with so much fear that they'll wish they never became villains. You'll never know how to have any real fun unless you cut loose and enjoy yourself. Naruto rolled his eyes in exasperation at the QB's playful antics. Though, he had to admit that the idea of pounding in a few villains did sound pretty good, not to mention he need to further test his abilities in live combat anyway, so why not look for some super villains to test himself with. It was decided. Naruto would test out his abilities the next chance he got. All he needed was the opportunity and a worthy adversary. Later that night Naruto adorned his superhero outfit, which was his new ninja attire. He wore a long white sleeveless cloak that was similar to his father's, except it was modified to Naruto's liking. The cloak's inside was colored a cool blue with an intricate yet beautiful design of a goldfish stenciled into the fabric. Blue flames danced across its bottom edges. Embedded on the back of the cloak was the kanji for Rokudaime Hokage. Sixth Fire Shadow, as a symbol for his past dreams. He wore a Jonin high ninja flak jacket around his chest area with open-toed sandals. A dark blue mask covered the bottom of his facial features like Kakashi had worn his. And a forehead protector with the leaf symbol was strapped around his forehead. His blonde hair had grown out, extending past his jawline, giving him a similar look to his father. It wasn't long before Naruto heard a woman's screams close by. Naruto quickly sped off in the direction to find two young women surrounded by four shady-looking guys. Three of them were harassing the girls while they had the fourth one keep lookout. It was when one of the men pulled out a knife on the girls that Naruto narrowed his eyes in contained anger as he moved in to take out these dangerous men. The man with the knife and their apparent leader grinned lecherously at the frightened girls as he carelessly waved the knife in front of the two. The man with the knife and their parent leader grinned lecherously at the frightened girls as he carelessly waved the knife in front of the two. Don't be scared, all we want is any cash you got. The girls backed further against the wall to their back, they were trapped. One of the women, a dark-haired brunette, held her red-headed friend closer to her in an act to protect her friend. "Ah, isn't that cute? But that ain't gone." Much by his words were lost as something dragged him off into the darkness. The thugs and girls were surprised at the man's sudden disappearance. A few of the men pulled out pistols but were pulled into the shadows before they could fire at anything, much less see what their target was. There was only one thug left who was now freaking out with the sudden disappearance of his fellow thugs. A figure arose from the shadows, revealing himself to the remaining thug and girls. The figure appeared to be male and wore unfamiliar-looking clothes that looked like something only a superhero or villain would wear. The man's identity was covered, but his sunny-colored blonde hair was completely exposed and his mask revealed brilliant blue eyes that were currently glaring daggers at the thug. Said thug felt a shiver go up his spine. The man's eyes seemed to be staring right into his very soul. The thug pulled out his own gun and pointed it at the women. Don't move or else I'll blow this bitch's brains out." Naruto knew of what that weapon could do if fired off. It fired fast-moving projectiles, but unfortunately for the thug, he could move even faster. In a movement quicker than the thug could see, the blonde man disappeared from his view, and the next he saw was blackness as he dropped to the ground unconscious. Now that the thugs were taken care of, Naruto turned his attention to the stunned girls. He gave them the classic Kakashi eye smiles. "Are you girls okay?" The girls didn't know anything about their savior, but his now warm demeanor gave them much relief. "Why yes, thanks for saving us. We were on our way back to our apartment from work when we were surrounded by those thugs," spoke the brunette. "Well, I'm glad I was nearby when it happened then, although you were very brave in defending your friend here, miss." The brunette blushed a little. "Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't introduce ourselves." My name is Miranda. The redhead pointed to herself in a chirper attitude compared to just a few moments before. My name's April. What's your name, mister? Naruto moved to round up the unconscious thugs. You can refer to me as the Hokage, Fire Shadow. Well, it was nice meeting you lovely ladies. Stay safe now. With that, Naruto disappeared in a swirl of leaves that left the girls surprised, thinking of the events that had transpired. Naruto tied the thugs up and dumped them at the nearest police office. Of course, without being spotted. Naruto jumped across the rooftops as he hummed to himself, a successful first appearance for ourselves if I don't say so myself. Kurama grumbled in a bored tone. Yawn, if it was me I would have just squashed those petty flea bags under my paw and wiped them off on the ground. Relax, there will be plenty of opportunities to test our strength. And I already told you we won't just go killing random people. Naruto was right. In the next few weeks his appearance in the city of San Francisco would grab the attention of many people, including some super-powered beings. 1 month later. In the past month, Naruto had made a lot more appearances as the Hokage, grabbing many people's attention in the process. At first it starred Ted with many of the city's local crime thugs or thieves, in which Naruto helped stop. In fact, on several occasions Naruto had left tied-up criminals on the doorstep of police offices. Though, Naruto made sure to only interfere when the police were either unavailable or if a life was being threatened. After all, it was still the police's job to protect the city, and he didn't want to just take their jobs. Although it was becoming a funny gag to them when they would sometimes find the tied-up thugs with notes attached that said, "Here's today's shipment of trash to put away or special delivery." Crime rates had significantly decreased and the people had only caught glimpses of their apparent hero. What little pictures reporters could get, managed to capture him on camera, though much of it was slightly blurred. At the very least they saw the kanji or logo on his back that they immediately translated into Hokage, giving the hero his title. As for the hero himself, they managed to determine his gender to be male from the reports an eyewitness that saw him. So far though, the man hadn't displayed too many abilities other than the fact that he had excellent hand-to-hand combat abilities and incredible speed that at sometimes, people compared to the Flash himself. This earned him the other title known as the Yellow Flash, as that was what many thugs reported as the last thing they saw before they were knocked unconscious. The Flash himself had heard about this and commented that while he admitted the Hokage was indeed quick, he was still faster, though he mentioned that he wouldn't mind having a race with the new hero to prove his point as he had once done so with Superman. Many others of the superhero community were curious about the new hero while the villains varied from curios to wary as well. In that short amount of time Naruto had made a major enemy of himself to the city's local gangs. All of them were more cautious and afraid to go against the hero, so most made the wise decision to stay clear of San Francisco and the Hokage's way. One thing was for sure for Naruto. Things were about to become more interesting in his life once again. In recent news, we've received more reports of San Francisco's new hero whom has been titled as the Hokage. Thanks to the Hokage, crime rate has dropped down astronomically. Very little is known about the hero in question, but we have confirmed the hero to be male. Some people have claimed that the Hokage is a metahuman, but most of this is speculation since he has yet to show any signs of abnormal abilities. Eyewitnesses who have come into contact with the hero have stated that the man is of Japanese heritage, but his physical appearance says otherwise. So far the Hokage has displayed skills that at times resemble the ninja from old times in history, which is why many people believe him to have some Japanese heritage. In other news, Naruto smirked a little as he walked away from the TV displayed in the window. It looked like the public still didn't know too much about him. Good. The majority of it was just speculation. Most of the people seemed to view him as a positive influence in the city. But others such as the criminals and more bigotry people absolutely loathed his presence. Oh well, you can't win them all. Naruto was currently walking through the streets of San Francisco, taking a breather from both his training and hero activities. Hey, even he needed some downtime every now and then. So far his training had provided fruitful results as he now had down the basics of the 5 major elements, though he was still perfecting them. Unfortunately, Naruto's success with the more potent of the Rinnegan's abilities had led to disappointing results. Had he not had Kurama's help, Naruto was certain that it would have taken him some years to understand the basics of the powerful Dujutsu I technique. Thankfully, Kurama had a good amount of experience involving the Rinnegan Samsara I from when he witnessed the Rakuto Sennin, Sage of Six Paths, use the Dujutsu. But even with his tenant's help, the steps it took to learn how to wield the Rinnegan properly were long and difficult. How Nagato was able to use it to such an amazing high degree, Naruto will never know. Naruto's shadow clones were unable to wield the Rinnegan, but Naruto figured that with time he could eventually do that when he had achieved to a higher level. There were no dead corpses for him to use as vessels, so for now Naruto settled for what Madara had done and use all the path's powers with his own body. QB Nine-Tailed Fox had stressed that Naruto should not attempt to summon the Outer Path's demonic statue, since doing so could cripple Naruto for life like it had done with Nagato. Of course Naruto wouldn't summon the statue, but he appreciated Kurama's concern. Although he wasn't even sure he could summon it from this dimension considering how he had already tried using the Rinnegan to summon an animal, but it didn't work. In fact, he couldn't even summon any of the toads to this world. So far he still only had the Diva and Human path and hasn't managed to unlock one of the other paths. Although he has at least learned to use the Human path better, so now it only takes him 2 minutes to read someone's mind completely, and he has learned to use the Diva paw to attract and repel things that are about the size and weight of a human being, but anything heavier would just shake from him trying to pull or push it. Even though the fox would never admit it out loud, he had slowly grown attached to Naruto over the years that he had been sealed inside him. Kurama had probably started to form a real connection with Naruto a little after he confronted Naruto. About how he can't change the course of hatred is proven by his failure with Sasuke and the hatred in the war caused by the loss of comrades. It was after seeing his will and hearing his desire to do something about Kurama's own hatred that he had begun to secretly trust him. After spending more time in this new dimension, Naruto was able to distinguish the technology difference of this world compared to the elemental nations. While shinobi did indeed have television, it wasn't nearly as publicized as it was here. Naruto felt that quite a bit of it was practically garbage, with the exceptions of the news, information, cartoons, game shows and a few other channels. It irked him when he first saw those advertisements during commercial breaks. Particularly, whenever they advertised medical prescriptions with the possible chances of ill side effects. Though, Kurama especially loved the side effect of a possibility in death, much to Naruto's displeasure. While we're on the topic of Naruto's displeasure, he was, for the lack of a better word, well bored. Despite the fact that Naruto had swept out a good portion of San Francisco's criminal activities, there wasn't too much action going on for him. Especially since there didn't seem to be any super-powered villains in the area. Boring. Where is all the excitement? All these small fry are hardly a good challenge for us. At least in the elemental nations, some of the more hardened and experienced shinobi could give us a challenge. You can't even consider these meat bags as a decent warm-up. The giant demon fox complained for the 100th time. A tick mark grew on Naruto's head. He could only take so much of Kurama's bitching over how boring it was lately and how there was never a good fight. As annoying as the fox was, Naruto had to admit that he was right. It had been kind of dull as of recently with no challenging figures in the area. While it was great that he had been able to lock up all these criminals behind bars, none of them had forced him to really let loose. An idea crossed his mind. Perhaps it was now time for a traveling trip out of town. Quit complaining, damn it. I swear if I have to listen your complaints for another minute I'll get minor brain damage. Maybe if you're good then we can go and visit another city that has been known to house super-powered beings. Naruto jeered while slowly rubbing his temples. You insolent whelp. Don't make it sound like I'm one of those Inuzuka dogs who you give treats to if they're good. Do you want to do something productive that we haven't done yet or not? Naruto shot back, daring the demon fox to say otherwise. A low grumble could be heard from the fox. Whatever, was Kurama's smart reply. Naruto smirked triumphantly. That's what I thought. Single quote. Break. A few days later, Naruto was currently sitting on a train headed towards Metropolis City, home of the great man of steel himself. It had been a damn pain to forge an ID so that he could take the train and any other forms of transportations. A few genjutsu techniques placed on some people for extra persuasion and he was officially a part of society. Though, Naruto made sure that the ID was based off the alias he used as an author for his book series. When he had first begun integrating himself into this world, Naruto had started the process of creating his own spy network. The network worked in similar ways that Naruto's godfather Jiraiya had used when gathering information on the Akatsuki. Whenever he needed some information on a subject or person, Naruto would always refer to the network for intel if they had it. While the internet was also a good source of information, Naruto preferred to not rely too heavily on it in case the information turned out faulty. Computer viruses and hackers were just the bane of his existence. Recently rumors had spread through his spy network that there was an organization that collected any data involving the world's superpowered beings. What they did with the gathered data no one knew, but it was speculated that it wasn't good. The rumors unfortunately could not prove this so-called organization's existence, as there was just not enough evidence of its permanence. In fact, Naruto's spy network was lucky to even find the rumor of the organization's existence. Whenever a possible link to its actuality appeared, the evidence was almost immediately removed as if it was never there. This made Naruto suspicious, as there was a possibly truth to these rumors. Though, Naruto could understand the need for such an organization, since the ordinary humans most likely felt threatened by all these beings with abilities beyond the norm. The only things that worried Naruto was just how far these people would go to protect themselves. And he didn't even want to think of what would happen if they discovered Kurama's existence. Who knows what steps they would take to obtain him for his power or destroy him. Naruto glanced outside his compartment's window. Already he could see that the train was nearing Metropolis, so he closed his book. After getting off the train, Naruto began to take a detour around the city and sightsee. There didn't seem to be too many differences between Metropolis and San Francisco, but Naruto did notice that Metropolis appeared to have more high-tech technology. Though, that was to be expected since the majority of the city's profits came from LexCorp. His spy network had confirmed that the owner of LexCorp, one Lex Luthor, had some form of rivalry with Superman. Though, the term rivalry may be putting it mildly, as if one could dig deep enough then you could see that Lex absolutely loathed Superman, enough to the point where some people had suspicions that he had tried to kill the Man of Steel on several occasions. None of these incidents could be confirmed, as everything pertaining to this subject had been sealed off, so to speak. When Naruto had a backtrack done on Lex Luthor, there had been signs of shady dealings involving the man and his company. Naruto made note to never trust this man, especially since Superman seemed to distrust him greatly. And Superman was known greatly for his honesty. Naruto had heard of all of Superman's good deeds. He admired the Man of Steel's gentle heart and physical prowess. If what he heard was true of the man's strength, then he could very well rival Tsunade, if not actually beat her in physical strength. The very thought of someone who actually packed more of a punch than Tsunade actually scared the crap out of him. Naruto had heard of the unfortunate incident that had occurred between Superman and Apocalypse, where he was supposedly captured and brainwashed into thinking he was Darkseid's ally, and where he had him attack Metropolis. It was only thanks to Supergirl's intervention and Luthor's kryptonite missile that he was stopped. However, both Kryptonians were captured by the government. Ho believed they both purposely betrayed the human race. They somehow managed to escape where Superman supposedly went to confront Darkseid and narrowly defeated him, but didn't kill when he had the chance. As much as Naruto held some respect for Superman, he couldn't fathom why he didn't just kill Darkseid after what he had done to both him and Metropolis. The only thing he could compare it to was how Obito took control and manipulated the previous Mizukage, starting the bloodline purge that was responsible for the death of many bloodline users and the death of Haku's parents. The detour around the city eventually led the blonde shinobi to one of the buildings that Metropolis was most famous for, besides Superman. The building was fairly tall and had a giant globe placed at the top. Hitch had the words Daily Planet etched around the sphere, making it look like the planet Saturn. The Daily Planet had an excellent reputation for finding the truth in news and was a good supporter of Superman. Naruto's musings of the building were interrupted when he suddenly found that someone had bumped him and fallen in the process. On reflex, Naruto was able to grab the person before they hit the ground. The person in question turned out to be a young brunette girl who appeared to be around Naruto's age. She was shorter than Naruto and wore business attire. Her hair was put in to two ponytails on each side that hung over her shoulders, while clear glasses covered her teal blue eyes. All in all, she was a very plain-looking girl. Though if one looked hard enough, you could see she wore a wig and was actually very pretty. Naruto had to give her a double take because unlike the average person, she emitted a small but strong amount of chakra. She may have been trying to mask it with her getup. But with the training that Naruto had with nature chakra, he was extremely good at picking up even faint traces of life's source. There was no way that he could miss someone with this much chakra. Especially when the majority of the planet's inhabitants had an extremely small amount of chakra. The one question that ran through Naruto's mind was, who was this girl? And for matter, how did she have this much chakra? Already his mind worked on overdrive for a possible answer. The most likely of them revolved around the possibility that this girl was a super-powered being. Not to mention, it felt like I walked right into a wall. Naruto thought. The girl in topic gave him a concerned look. I'm sorry. I wasn't looking. Did you hurt your head? You look like you're spacing out. Naruto waved off her concerns, silently thanking for the henge that he still had on. Oh, don't worry about me, I'm fine, miss. He paused for her to finish. The fake brunette gave a sigh of relief while mentally thanking she hadn't accidentally hurt this person. While her strength may not be as strong as Clark's, she was still a very powerful girl. She had to constantly watch our strength when it came to normal people. Ah, my family calls me Kara. A feminine voice interrupted her. The two teens turned to the steps of the Daily Planet to see an attractive woman who appeared in her mid to late 20s. Said woman had long black hair that extended near her waist in the back. She wore a casual purple business top, with a pearl-colored skirt that stopped a little past the mid-thigh, and small black high-heel shoes. Naruto recognized the woman as Lois Lane. She was the Daily Planet's best reporter. She had covered plenty of Superman's stories, and there were even some rumors that she may have some relationship with the Man of Steel himself. Kara, Clark told me that you were gonna fill in him for today while he's covering a story in Gotham. You're late, where have you been? Lois then notices who Kara was with, causing a sly smirk to cross her face. Oh, I see, so you're shirking off responsibilities for some boy, huh? She teased. Kara blushed at what Lois was insinuating. Wait a minute. I just met this guy. I've never seen him before in my life and I just overslept. That's why I'm late. Lois just shrugged slightly, clearly not buying her story, much to Kara's annoyance and embarrassment. Suddenly an idea forms in the reporter's head, making her smirk turn more mischievous. Kara didn't like the look in Lois's face, it gave her a bad vibe. Perhaps I should tell Martha and Jonathan of your secret relationship. Or better yet, I bet Clark would love to know about this. Kara's eyes grew horrified at the prospect. Clark was the best cousin Kara could have asked for. But he could be extremely overprotective sometimes. Before Lois could continue torturing Kara, screams echoed around the corner, alarming the three. In the distance, bolts of electricity cackled across the street, shattering some windows in the process. All the electricity on the block seemed to be shorting out for some reason. Kara and Lois had a hunch on who was causing this. They only knew one person who could mess with the city's electricity, Livewire. Lois pulled out a small camera from her purse, and then addressed the two teens. We need to get these people away. A safe distance and wait for either Superman, Supergirl, or Steel to come handle this. The two teens immediately sprang into action, guiding some of the people out of the street. Using the chaos as a distraction, Kara slipped through the crowd into a nearby alley to don her hero outfit, though this did not go unnoticed by a certain blonde shinobi. Just then bolts of electricity coursed through the city's street and starting forming together. In a small flash of sparks, a pale-skinned woman wearing a black leotard with a lightning bolt etched across her outfit appeared in the middle of the street. She laughed as she launched small bolts of electricity at the fleeing people. Before she could fry anyone, a large post box was thrown her way. Livewire managed to stop it in place by encasing it in her electricity, throwing it back in the direction of the person who tossed it at her with double the force. When it reached its target, the person simply bashed it away. Livewire smirked at who it was. Well, Well, if it isn't Superman's little sidekick. All by yourself too, where is Big Blue? Kara ignored her comments, that's none of your business. Besides, he doesn't need to be here for this. I can take care of you myself. I bet you'd make a nice decoration for my Christmas tree. Kara taunted. Livewire leered at her for the jab, that's it blonde, I'm gonna fry you. After safely evacuating the people, Naruto dressed in his ninja garb in case things got dicey for Supergirl. In the meantime he just watched the two go at it from afar. Supergirl seemed to be having some trouble. While she did have the strength to knock Livewire out if she could get close enough to her, Livewire didn't make it easy for her. Whenever Kara tried to close the distance between the two she would narrowly be hit by a lightning bolt, and Livewire would just turn to lightning and flash warp a bit further away to keep her distance. Kara could take a good hit, but she knew from experience how painful those bolts of lightning could be. Livewire wouldn't be running out of energy anytime soon as she would just recharge herself with the electricity that coursed throughout the city. For while it had been a stalemate between the two until an unexpected factor came in. A green fluorescent beam of energy flew through the air, striking Supergirl in her back. The young blonde teen screamed in pain, falling toward the ground like a bird shot out of the air. Kara's eyes slowly moved towards the direction of where the beam had come from. Her eyes widened in realization of who it was, Metallo. Naruto was surprised. His senses hadn't picked up the metal man coming. Perhaps because Metallo is a non-organic being with no form of chakra in its system. But Naruto's senses did pick out a faint energy coming from the Metallo's chest section. It was a form of energy that Naruto was not familiar with. Naruto grimaced at the man's appearance. Metallo's clothes were torn in many sections and half the skin on his face was mangled, revealing the other half of his face to be cybernetic. Upon closer inspection, Naruto's face flickered in recognition. From the research that Naruto had done on all of Superman's known enemies, he was able to determine that this was Metallo. His name certainly suited him considering he was entirely made of metal. He kind of reminded Naruto a bit of Pain's Asura path, except that Metallo didn't have any weapons on his body, with the exception of that beam he fired from his chest. Metallo spoke in his British accent, a smirk crossing the small part of the face he had left. It appears that Superman isn't here for the day. Oh well, I guess we'll have to settle for you then. Livewire grinned with a look that promised pain. Yeah, I can see it now. Big Blue comes back to find your crispy charred body hanging from a flag pole, she spoke as her hands sparked in electricity. Just as Metallo opened his chest plate to shoot another beam, he heard the sound of faint swooshing in the air. He turned around only to receive a few missiles that sent him hurtling into a nearby car, which exploded on contact. Kara smiled at who saved her, Steel. A man in a suit of silver armor stood where Metallo was, holding a larger hammer in his hand. Glad I came in time. Looks like you could use a hand here. Metallo arose from the car wreckage, seemingly unharmed except for a few scorch burns from the missile projectiles and explosion. The metal plating that coated Metallo's body was made of an unknown but very strong material, which was highly resilient to most forms of damage. There were only a few known weapons that could possibly put a dent in the metal armor. Metallo tore off what remained of his destroyed shirt. That wasn't very nice. Livewire, you handle him. I got Supergirl. Livewire grumbled. She hated being told what to do, but she knew it was better for Metallo to take on Supergirl because of the kryptonite in his chest plate. Her hands cackled again with electricity as she shot after Steel, who prepared himself for her attack. Metallo then turned his attention to Supergirl, who was now standing, as she had somewhat recovered from the kryptonite beam. She made sure to keep a good distance as attacking Metallo head-on would most likely result in her death. Although that brought the problem of how she'd fight him without getting close to him. Besides using her heat vision, there weren't that many other ways she could fight him, since she and Superman did tend to mostly rely on their strength to fight their enemies. Kara started sweating nervously. That beam took a lot of energy out of me. A few more of those and I'm a goner. Damn kryptonite, she thought. In the shadows, Naruto noticed Supergirl's predicament. It seemed that beam took quite a bit of chakra from her, given that her levels had dropped a good bit, which meant that now was the best time to reveal himself and help her out. Steel. seemed to holding his own against Livewire for the moment, so he focused his attention on Metallo. With one last smirk, Naruto took off to make his grand entrance. Metallo prepared to move in on sup. Girl when an object struck the ground next to him. He looked down to see that the object in question seemed to be a strange-looking knife that had papers tied on its handle with weird markings on it. All of a sudden the paper caught on fire and started burning, like something similar to the fuse from a stick of explosive dynamite. Metallo's eyes widened when the paper tag suddenly stopped and exploded, causing debris and smoke to fill the area. When the smoke began to clear, it showed that Metallo was unharmed, just momentarily surprised. Through Metallo's enhanced vision he could see a figure amongst the smoke and debris. The figure knelt by Supergirl. Supergirl was surprised at the sudden appearance of this man when the strange-looking knife had exploded. The man looked eerily familiar to her, but she just couldn't place her finger on who he was. The man looked young and had the most beautiful-looking cerulean eyes she had ever seen that were currently showing signs of RN mixed in with a playful yet mischievous nature. "Are you all right, beautiful?" The young man's comment momentarily stunned her, as a small tint of red flashed across her cheeks. No one had ever come NTED on her looks to her so openly before. She quickly regained her composure. "Yeah, I'll be alright when I absorb enough of the sun's rays. But that kryptonite of Metallo's is interfering with my abilities. Then consider it gone," was the man's reply before he got up to go face Metallo. "Wait, Metallo is pretty tough. He can give Superman a tough time," Kara protested. Naruto turned his head, slightly so she only saw the right side of his face. He gave her a Kakashi eye smile in reassurance. "I'm well aware. I'll be careful. Though, it's nice to know that such a pretty girl is worried about my well-being." He walked away as a small blush reappeared across Kara's face. Kara didn't know why, but for some reason she believed in what the man had said and stood back to watch. Metallo got a good look at who interfered and threw the exploding knife. A flicker of recognition crossed his ugly face. "Wait, I know you. You're that new wannabe hero from San Francisco. The one they call Hokage. Huh, you think some ninja tricks are gonna be able to actually harm me? That's rich, huh?" Metallo's words were cut off when he momentarily lost sight of the now-known Hokage. It was only because of his enhanced vision and reaction speed that Metallo had been able to react in time. Naruto had narrowly missed stabbing through Metallo's face. Metallo was able to dodge to the side, though not completely unharmed. A look of shock crossed Metallo's face as a clear cut marked the side of his face. The cut even pierced into his metal body, much to his surprise. He looked at the Hokage and the trench knives placed around the blonde shinobi's knuckles. Trench knives? How could that have pierced my armor plating? It had to have been a fluke, Metallo's mind screamed in outrage. "Hey, how the hell did you cut my armor? The metal on my body is one of the hardest on this planet. There's no way that just those trench knives could pierce it." Naruto casually twirled the trench knife on his right hand. "I thought you said my ninja parlor tricks wouldn't hurt you. Besides, a good ninja never reveals his secrets unless he has to, so good luck trying to figure me out." Meanwhile, in Naruto's mindscape, that's some tough armor. Normally the Hien technique, Flying Swallow, would have done much more than just chip someone's face. Guess Tin Man wasn't exaggerating the toughness of his armor. "If I'm gonna make a bigger impression, then I'll need to add in some Fuetant Wind Chakra." Single quote. Kurama seemed giddy with excitement. Finally, an opponent that can actually take a hit. "Maybe we can actually get a good workout this time." Naruto couldn't help but agree. He was excited as well, though it looked like he may need something with a little more humph to it so he could bypass that armor of his. A mischievous fox-like grin etched across his face. "But first let's mess with old Tin Man here. Why don't you do us all a favor and go back to whatever factory manufactured you?" Naruto's face scrunched in thought. No wait. On second thought you could make an excellent toaster. Nah, they probably would come out all burned. Perhaps a laptop. I've been meaning to get an AW1, but then again if your face is the screensaver then I don't even want to look at it all. Naruto's musings were interrupted by a furious Metallo who threw a nearby car at the young shinobi, forcing him to dodge. The chest plate on Metallo opened as he shot a barrage of kryptonite beams at Naruto. Metallo glared hatefully at the shinobi who continued to dodge the kryptonite beams while continuing his verbal assaults. Tisk tisk. You have quite the temper tantrum there, Tin Man. Be careful now, wouldn't want to blow a circuit or something. I still need you at least somewhat intact if I want my new laptop. Metallo absolutely loathed this new character. He was by far the most annoying person he had yet to meet. Metallo was just further infuriated by the way the Hokage was playing him. Using his strength, Metallo tore off a nearby street post pole from the ground and swung it like a bat in frustration. Stay still, damn it. At this rate we'll cause too much property damage. It seems like the source of his power comes from the kryptonite in his chest, which is emitting that strange energy signature I sensed earlier. Oh well, time to end this. Naruto pumped more chakra into his trench knives and legs as the bat came down on him. Just when Metallo thought he had finally gotten him, the pole split in two with both remaining pieces crashing to the ground. He heard the faint sound of swirling wind. Moments later he found the Hokage appear from seemingly out of nowhere right in front of him with a blue swirling ball of energy in his hand. Rasengan. Spiraling sphere. Eat, the Hokage shouted, smashing the ball of energy into Metallo's chest plate where the kryptonite was held. Naruto put enough dense chakra in the Rasengan to drill through Metallo's dense armor. No. Metallo managed to shout out before he felt the power from the kryptonite in him lose power. With no power source in his body, Metallo dropped to the ground with a loud thud. His glowing eyes slowly faded till they were pitch black. Any remaining spectators that had watched the battle from a safe distance were shocked from the fight's outcome, even Kara. It wasn't every day that you see someone like Metallo being taken down in such a manner. Now that the kryptonite was destroyed, Naruto turned his attention back to Kara. Now that he's been taken care of, let me see what I can about that wound. Naruto pointed to the small burn mark on her back that had also torn a small hole in her clothes. Kara shrugged off her momentary shock, waving him off. You don't need to, it'll heal on its own when I gather more energy from the sun. Naruto's brows furrowed. Don't be stubborn, besides it's not polite to deny someone's sincerity. With that he went to her backside to inspect her wounds. Naruto gave a small nod to himself before placing both hands right above the wound. Kara could see from the corner of her eye that the Hokage's hands were glowing with a faint energy. Whatever he was doing, it gave her a weird but good feeling that she had never experienced before. Naruto had actually been using a portion of Kurama's chakra to speed up the healing process on Kara's wound. A few minutes later Naruto removed his hands from her back, giving her the okay to move. Steel came in with a soaking and unconscious Livewire slung over his shoulder. Kara thanked the Hokage before moving toward Steel. Hey Steel, you okay? Kara asked, inspecting him with her X-ray vision, looking for any signs of injuries. Oh, I'm alright. Though, little Miss Light Bulb here's electricity. Why is playing hell with my suit circuits? But nothing I can't fix. Thankfully there was a nearby fire hydrant to cool her off. I saw you get hit by Metallo's kryptonite beam, are you hurt? He asked in concern. Kara gave him a reassuring smile. I'm fine. My wounds healed up alright. Steel's eyes glanced at the unmoving body of Metallo, then back to Kara. He jerked his thumb at Naruto. He took care of the cyborg over here. Kara nodded her head, quickly explaining what she had seen of the Hokage's fight with Metallo. Police sirens wailed, most likely to investigate what had transpired. Thankfully, Naruto had managed to prevent the fight from producing too much property damage. Naruto motioned the two heroes for their attention. Well, that's my cue to leave now. It was nice meeting you too, especially you Supergirl. Farewell for now. Wait, you're the Hokage from San Francisco. Not that we don't appreciate the help, but why are you here? Questioned Steel. Naruto spoke without turning back around. I decided to explore a bit, so I left San Francisco and decided to take a detour in Metropolis to see if I could meet Superman, and I just happened to be nearby in the area. Kara and Steel now tensed up a bit. Why do you want to see Superman? Kara asked. Seeing their tenseness, Naruto shrugged. No real reason, I was just curious about one of the most famous heroes, and though I could just talk to him, but since he's not here I may as well move on to my next destination, Naruto said before he walked away, disappeared in a swirl of leaves, much to Kara and Steel's surprise. as a group of reporters started flooding the area. Among those reporters was a concerned Lois who questioned the two remaining heroes about the Hokage's appearance. Kara was left wondering what exactly kind of person was the Hokage. She hadn't had the opportunity to use her X-ray vision to see his face, but her instincts told her that the man was fairly young, possibly around her age. The man's actions and behavior left a deep impression in Kara. The young Argonne found herself slightly blushing when she remembered the small interactions she held with the Hokage and the look of his beautiful blue eyes. Perhaps in time she would meet the man again, and hopefully soon. For the past few days now, Naruto's fight against Metallo had been the talk of the town, or worldwide news to be more exact. More people had taken notice of the new hero now that he seemed to display meta-human-like abilities. Reporters did manage to capture the footage of his fight in Metropolis, giving everyone their first good look at the hero. In recent news it appears that the new hero on the block has finally showed the telltale signs of a meta-human's abilities. Reporters over on the scene in Metropolis were unable to get an interview with the Hokage as he had disappeared shortly after his confrontation with Metallo. Fortunately they were able to get an interview with the two Metropolis heroes who had contact with the man in question. The interview will be played after we come back, as well as a clear image of the Hokage's appearance. A figure in the shadows paused the monitor before bringing up the video of Naruto fighting Metallo in his Hokage garb. The figure examined each and every detail of Naruto's appearance, fighting style, abilities and very behavior during the fight. The figure in question was currently wearing a gray jumpsuit of unknown material and covered it with a jet black cape that was connected to his cowl which resembled a bat. Another figure stood behind the man resembling a bat. This man wore blue tights that held a S in a shield on his chest, as well as a long red cape that was slung over his wide shoulders. The figure was Superman and he had just come back from a quick trip to Metropolis to make sure if Kara and Steel were okay after the events with Metallo and Livewire. So did you find anything on him yet? Without removing his calculating eyes from the screen he replied to Superman. The man shows exceptional skill and inhuman-like reflexes, as well as mastery in forms of martial arts. I analyzed the knife he first threw to distract Metallo. The monitor zoomed in on Naruto's kunai. You may notice the knife is a weapon once used from ninjas back in the old times, the kunai. The tag attached to its handle has some form of ancient Japan. Say writing on it that my computers have failed to decipher, which could mean the writing is in some type of mystic arts language. All we know is that the tag has the capability of exploding like dynamite once burnt. What's unusual though is that he was able to pierce Metallo's armor with only those trench knives. I've analyzed what it's made of and the results came back positive as basic metal W. Which makes no sense considering how dense and resilient Metallo's armor is. It shouldn't have been possible for it to even so much as scratch him. Both men noticed something strange about the trench knives when the Hokage used them to slice the street pole. Do you see the faint outline of energy that's surrounding the trench knives when he cuts the pole? Superman asked. It's possible that he coats the knives with some form of energy to increase their cutting potential. There's also the moment where he uses this same energy to heal Supergirl's injuries, and again when he forms the SWIRLING ball of energy to carve into Metallo's chest. The video screen displayed the scene of when Naruto put his hands over Kara's back. Her injuries were healed in mere moments, followed by the clip of the Rasengan spiraling sphere. If I meet up with him, and I have a feeling I will, I'll see if I can scan any energy readings he may emit. Until then we don't know what sort of other powers he may possess. Or if he's really a villain posing as a hero. Batman or Bruce Wayne didn't quite trust this new arrival. Though that was to be expected, as he never trusted anyone without knowing what they were capable of and what their motives were. Even then he had trusting issues. The only people that he could even say knew the real him were his faithful butler Alfred, Superman, the Bat family, and a few of his close friends, allies. Superman held his chin in thought. On one hand he was grateful for the fact that the Hokage had saved Kara, but on the other hand nobody really knew too much about who he was, where he came from, or what were the full limits of the powers he truly possessed. The man was a total mystery, there just wasn't info on him to decide if he was a true threat or not. Though for some reason Kara seemed to believe him to be a good person, and for now that was good enough for Clark. He'd give this new hero the benefit of the doubt if he ever met him. Maybe he could potentially become a future ally. In a secret location far from Gotham. Meanwhile, another mysterious group was reviewing the data on Naruto. The group was funded by the government to collect any data on every vigilante, superhero, villain, or meta-human that posed a threat to human society. Anything to give normal humans an edge or a chance to fight back at any threats they deemed worthy of notice. Once all the members of the group had gathered, the meeting had begun. So another meta-human has cropped up, huh? That's not abnormal considering new ones tend to appear every now and then. Why has this one warranted such attention? This one may be different. So far we haven't been able to track him or find his base of operations, if he even has one. He's definitely been trained well in stealth and infiltration to have avoided us so far. You have my attention, and what of his other abilities? One of the figure's brows furrowed in slight irritation. Currently we know very little of his abilities and how they work, other than what we've seen and heard from footages and eyewitnesses. Though, we have been able to determine that whenever he uses his abilities he emits in traces of an unknown source of energy from his body. Another figure, this one wore a general's uniform, brought up the picture of Naruto when he poured chakra into his trench knives. The figures could see a faint blue outline of energy around the blades. Another was when Naruto formed a Rasengan and shoved it into Metallo's chest. So far, he's shown capabilities of using this energy to not only power his techniques, but utilize them in more than just combat. The video changed to where Naruto healed Kara. He could either become a significant threat to us in the future or we could have him join us. Make sure to keep watch of his progress, and also keep track of any other abilities he can use. I want someone to analyze that energy source, maybe we can replicate it to our advantage. My sentiments exactly. This meeting is adjourned. With that, each person began to leave to review the data they had collected on the Hokage. High in the buildings of Gotham City, a lone figure sat eating a cup of warm ramen noodles with a large smile on his face. After the events in Metropolis, Naruto had gone into hiding in the city, to escape the chaos that followed in the form of reporters. It's been way too long since I had ramen, the god of all foods. Naruto thought as he swung his feet over the edge of the building like a toddler. Kurama resisted the urge to face palm at Naruto's behavior. Just when he thought the boy was beginning to mature somewhat, he brings back his childish tendencies. Though, he must admit that he liked the way Naruto had avoided revealing his identity. Especially from those damn awful reporters. They were like cockroaches, no matter how you avoided them, they always came back. Some had even tried to give him and his tenant a bad representative Hitch nearly caused the QB to want to rip their throats off. Unfortunately for him, Naruto was stern on his stance at not killing anyone without good reason, even if that was a good enough reason for Kurama to kill someone. Though that was beside the point, there was a bigger issue at hand. So what are gonna do about that organization that your spy network found? It's confirmed that they actually exist now that we spotted some of their agents trying to spy on us. Naruto slurped the last of his noodles and soup before replying to Kurama. Well, now that we know they're mobilizing and trying to gather more intel on us, it's best if we keep a lookout for more of them. Kurama grumbled in agreement, closing the topic and switching to another. Agreed. Now what are we doing here again exactly? Naruto shrugged. No particular reason really. I guess I just wanted to see if Gotham was really as corrupt as my spy network had said. Besides, maybe we'll get see how the Batman and his entourage operate. I did find it a shame that I didn't get to see Superman, although seeing Supergirl more than made up for it, he said the last part with a grin as he remembered the pretty blonde. However, his daydream was broken when the horrific smell of smog and cigarettes infiltrated Naruto's nose, much to his disgust as he plugged his nose. Though, I'm starting to regret that decision. This city has way too much pollution for my taste. I don't know how these people live in it every day. Kurama couldn't help but agree. Even though he detested the shinobi to an extent, at least they kept the air clean and untainted. Whereas this place was like a living dump of trash and contamination. Naruto reached into his ninja pouch, pulling out a small black book labeled, Bingo Book. Ever since his fight with Metallo, he had begun collecting more data on the more dangerous criminals and masterminds of this world's inhabitants on file. The principle was similar to how the ninja back in the L. Mental Nations recorded any rogue ninjas into a bingo book, or how this world's FBI most wanted list was done. I'm still curious as to why you seemed interested in that one particular girl you looked up. Kurama wasn't kidding either, since after the fight with Metallo, Naruto stayed hidden in Metropolis while secretly gathering information on all known supervillains. The list included Metallo, Livewire, Parasite, Toyman, Bizarro and others. However, there was one supervillain that got Naruto's interest. It was a supervillain by the name of Volcana, where surprisingly despite her name she didn't have lava-based powers. But she did have fire-based powers which nearly burned just as hot. She was a very attractive young woman who was likely in her early to late 20s. He had read that she was a thief who stole and had fought against Superman, where strangely enough she disappeared for a long period of time and wasn't seen again until a few short months later, where she started her crime spree again. Naruto didn't know why, but something about her interested him, and it wasn't just because she was smoking hot in every sense of the word, both figuratively and literally. After digging through her files more, he was surprised to find out how little of information there was on her background. In fact, it was almost as if her past had been erased. Naruto had a hunch that there was some possible pain or bad experience she had gone through in her life that made her the criminal she is, and it involved the events from her mysterious past. Either way, he planned to eventually begin a search for her to see if he can speak to her. Just curious is all. Naruto finally responded to the fox, who eventually dropped the topic. There were quite a few crazies that were sanctioned from Gotham. Especially this man who called himself the Joker. I mean, that guy was just batshit crazy. He practically defined the term itself. The only person that Naruto could compare him to was Orochimaru. And even that was stretching it a little. Never in his life did he think someone could actually compare to Orochimaru's creepiness, and he would always spit crap out from his mouth that seemed inhumanly impossible. While Naruto did admire and respect Batman's determination to never kill anyone at any cost, Naruto thought it was also slightly foolhardy. At the very least, Arkham Asylum should have made sure that he was securely locked up. It seemed like whenever Joker was sent to the asylum, he would always somehow escape and cause more chaos to the people of Gotham. There were some people in this world that didn't deserve to live, and the Joker was one of them. He could still remember all the death that Madara had caused before he finally managed to kill him for good. Recently in Gotham news, there was a rumor that Poison Ivy may have teamed up with Harley Quinn again and were causing trouble for Batman and his apprentices Batgirl and Robin. Naruto made sure to keep a lookout for anything out of place. Naruto repositioned himself into a crossed-legged position with his hands cupped together in a meditative stance. Naruto had to give his most absolute focus draw the necessary senjutsu natural energy chakra to go into sage mode. Though that was increasingly more difficult, considering where he was right now. All the factories and pollution in the sea were interfering with his gathering of nature chakra. When Naruto reopened his eyes, his pupils became golden slitted horizontal boxes with a reddish-orange pigmentation surrounding the edges of his eyes. After a minute of siphoning through the polluted crap in the air that somewhat interfered with his sensing abilities, Naruto checked the people's population for anything that seemed abnormal or out of place, and boy was there. Gotham seemed to be coaxed in a dark and negative aura around it that made Naruto feel uncomfortable with his surroundings. Off a few buildings nearby his location, he felt a disturbance in the chakra signatures. Though, it didn't necessarily give a feeling of negativity. Naruto stood up and took off into the area of the disturbance. Batgirl, or better known as Barbara Gordon, had heard of the reports on Harley and Ivy's team up and was currently on the lookout for the two per Batman's request. Though, instead of finding those two, she caught sight of someone who she hadn't seen in some time. A woman who resembled a cat scrambled across the building's roofs with cat-like grace and ease. Many knew this beautiful woman as Catwoman. But to those who were more close to her knew her to be Selina Kyle. Selina was an infamous cat burglar in Metropolis and probably one of the best that this world had seen. She even had somewhat of a shaky relationship with Batman that often shifted between the two, either working together or Batman trying to arrest the feline woman. Selina looked at the priceless jewelry in her hand that had beautifully crafted diamonds shaped into small heads of cats designed onto the necklace. She let a feline-like smile grace her lips as she used her whip as leverage to jump onto the next rooftop. Just as she was about to cross over the roof again, her senses picked up on a small whistling sound. The sound came closer until an object struck the ground in front of her. The object in question was something she had seen before, a batarang. She looked to the source of the person who threw the batarang, finding the female apprentice of Batman. Well, look what the cat dragged in. What are you doing back in Gotham? You're supposed to still be on probation, aren't you? Is that how you say hello to an acquaintance nowadays? Selina retorted. Don't act as if we're friends with each other. I asked you a question. Selina huffed in mock irritation. You're no fun. At least Batman was a gentleman. Yes, if you must know, I am still on probation, but this jewelry was too difficult to resist. And I have a hunch that it'll definitely help fund my nature preserve. Even if your reasons are for a good cause, I can't just let you steal that. It doesn't belong to you, now hand it over. Barbara held her hand out for the jewelry. Sorry kid, but I have no intention of giving it back. Catwoman bent down into a cat-like fighting stance. Barbara frowned. She would rather not fight the woman since she was not truly a bad person. But she couldn't just let her leave with the jewelry. She posed herself her own fighting stance. Both girls stared each other down, waiting for the other to make the first move. A minute seemed to pass by and Barbara grew impatient, so she decided to strike first. Within seconds the two were on each other, both throwing a flurry of well-placed kicks and punches. Neither seemed to be gaining the upper hand on each other, but the two were so absorbed into each other that they failed to notice that someone was watching them from afar. Naruto arrived. The disturbance he had felt earlier to find two women in costumes fighting with each other. Naruto recognized them both as Catwoman and Batgirl. The two were really going at it and Naruto was impressed with how good their hand-to-hand combat abilities were. He had overheard the two's argument before they had begun fighting, but was curious to see what they were capable of, and he was not the least bit disappointed. Both showed great skills, but Naruto's eyes caught how Selina was holding back a bit. That was mostly because she was known to abhor killing as much as Batman did, so she unconsciously held back. Naruto smirked to himself as an idea popped into his head. You planning to do what I think you're gonna do? Kurama asked with only one eye lazily opened. Naruto nodded, of course. I think it's time for another appearance. Barbara ducked to avoid a spinning kick to the head. At the rate they were going, she was just going to tire herself out. A part of her even realized Selina was holding back while she was going all out, but her pride as Batgirl would never admit that out loud. She momentarily thought of calling Batman or Robin for backup, but she quickly scratched that thought. Her pride just wouldn't let her do it. Simultaneously, they broke apart from their bout to observe the other. Both of them breathed deeply, but Barbara's breath seemed to be slightly more haggard. Clapping sounds caught both of their attention. To their surprise, a man who they both had seen in the news recently was sitting on top of a statue above them, the Hokage. But that wasn't what had come as a surprise to the girls. It was the fact that not only had they not noticed the man's presence, but he was also doing something that was not by normal, human standards possible. The blonde ninja was standing upside down on the statue without any support whatsoever. The Hokage stopped clapping and spoke in a deep baritone voice, though not quite as deep as Batman's. Both of you put on a great show of skills there. I'm impressed at how good your hand-to-hand combat capabilities are. He said before walking a few steps and jumping down, landing perfectly on his feet with practiced ease. Selina quickly regained her composure to question this new mysterious man. She had seen stranger things in her days. She placed one hand on her hip as she flashed Naruto one of her classic seductive smiles. Glad you enjoyed the view, but would you mind introducing yourself, if only for a proper greeting? Naruto gave the feline woman a grin, which could not be seen behind his mask. My mistake. I admit that I wasn't always one for manners. My real name is not important. However, you may call me Hokage. I'm currently on something of a world tour and just recently me to Gotham in order to see the sights after my visit to Metropolis. It's a pleasure to meet you both. He finished, bowing slightly to the women. Now that Naruto had gotten a closer look at the he had to admit that they both looked better in person than on photo, especially Selina Kyle. Selina stood at a good 5 feet, 7 inches and wore a black leather jumpsuit that she left unzipped slightly near her breast line, showing off her body's slender curves. Naruto actually had to make an effort to keep himself from looking below her face. Even though he had promised himself that he would never become a pervert like Jiraiya, he couldn't help but feel that the man had gotten to him slightly while they were on their training trip. Ever since then, Naruto has had an eye for pretty girls and an eye for observing the outfits they wore, which showed off their figures like the ones Selena and Batgirl were wearing. I've heard of your many exploits, Miss Kyle, and from what I've seen so far, your skills weren't exaggerated in the least. Just as beautiful as you are deadly, and you even share a love for animals, particularly cats. I myself am considered to be a fox. Though, while I do admire your activism with the protection of animals, I have to disagree with some of your methods. Well, someone's done their homework. So is that what you're truly here for, to arrest Miss Kyle? Barbara questioned. Batman himself had tried on several occasions to persuade the cat lover to stop her criminal activities, though to no avail. As discreetly as she could, the redhead activated a signal to Batman and Robin. Batman had told both Tim and Barbara to notify him if either one had gotten in more trouble than they could handle or have come into contact with the Hokage, since he had a hunch that blonde ninja may come to Gotham after finding out about his surprise visit to Metropolis. Naruto just shook his head. Honestly, I have no ulterior motive or desire to apprehend her. I just thought I would try my hand at convincing Miss Kyle here to change her methods. Selena raised a brow in slight curiosity. Really now? Batman has already dabbled in that area before. What makes you think you can convince me to change my ways? She used air quotes with her fingers. Because I know that despite your criminal activities, you're actually a decent person under that mask. Unlike the scum of Gotham, you don't hurt innocent people or try to kill anyone, which shows that you're not a bad person, just someone who does what she thinks she's right. You may have good reasons to do what you believe is best, but you're not using the best of methods to achieve what you want. A frown crossed Selena's face. You don't know me, Hokage. You've only just met me a few minutes ago. And there's nothing wrong with my methods. The volume in her voice steadily increased as her hand gestured toward the surrounding city. These people I steal from deserve what they got coming for them. They are all criminals who manipulate people to do their bidding just for the sake of money and any other selfish reasons. Naruto closed his eyes in deep thought, contemplating her words and sensing her growing emotions before he opened them again. So you're saying you only steal from the rich and corrupt because they don't deserve the treasures they possess, which they might have acquired through illegal actions? The response got both girls to raise their eyebrows at hearing his response. Selena wasn't deterred. I guess you could say that. However, I do admit that any cat-like artifact or jewel I see is one I tend to desire as well. Believing she had won the conversation, Selena decided to take her chances and escape off the ledge. As soon as she turned, though, she felt someone's hand hold her shoulder firmly in place. Surprise reached both women's faces when they noticed that it was the Hokage. That's fast. I didn't even notice him move, was both girls' collective thoughts. From the contact he had with Selena, Naruto could feel her emotions, anger and grief. Do you pour your love into animals because you feel that they are as mistreated as you once were? Those words struck a chord within Selena. Seeing her reaction, Naruto continued. I'm right, aren't I? If so, I can guess it has something to do with your deceased parents. You give animals the love you always wished you could have had with before they were gone and you were left alone in this world. That caused something in Selena to snap. Shut up. Selena hissed, slapping his hand away from her shoulders. Barbara was startled by Selena's sudden outburst. Never before had she seen her lose her cool. But just what had happened to her parents to get her this wild up? Don't you dare bring them in the conversation. Besides, how could you know how I feel? Because I have also felt the pain of losing my family. Selena's eyes widened when she saw his eyes. They bore similarities to her own. Eyes that showed a tragic past that would never leave you for the rest of your life. Selena tore her eyes away from the shinobi. They reminded her too much of the look she used to have as a kid. She tried to forget those tough times she experienced on the streets of Gotham as a child and of her parents. Naruto had done a full checkup on both Batgirl and Catwoman's files and history. After some digging, Naruto found out she was real. Why a beautiful young woman named Selena Kyle who held a tragic past. For reasons unknown to him, her parents had died when she was only a child. This left her without any parents as a kid, who had to adapt fast to live on the dangerous and corrupt streets of Gotham. Her situation felt so similar to his own when he was a kid that Naruto couldn't help but feel sympathy for the woman. Naruto could see she was struggling with her emotions and decided to leave it that for now as he stepped back to give her some space. I can see you need some time to think about what I said. Selena didn't respond back. She only pulled out the jewelry she had stolen earlier, throwing it at Batgirl, who deftly caught it on reflex. That's only because I know I can't beat you both at the same time. She lied. Naruto knew she understood where he was coming from, even if she didn't know what exactly he had experienced. Selena backflipped to the edge of the roof, blowing a kiss towards Naruto. Until the next time, Hokage. It was definitely a meeting I won't be forgetting anytime soon. You've given me plenty to think about, she said with her emotional mask back on as she let herself fall off the edge, disappearing into the shadows of the night. Batgirl ran over to the ledge quickly to see Catwoman running off in the far distance. Great, she got away. Why would you just let the thief run away like that? And what were you two talking about? She needed some time to think about what has happened, and it's not my place to say anything about her past even if I knew what it was. If you really want to know, then you should ask her yourself, not me. Naruto replied calmly as he looked to where Selena vanished. He could have easily followed her, he could have read her mind with the human path to F. Yuli see what she had been through, but he didn't want to purposely invade her privacy or let her see him transform his eyes into the Rinnegan. Naruto's eyes narrowed for a moment as he sensed Somethi near him before he let out a hidden smirk. Oh, and you can come out now, Batman and Robin. I know you're there. Batman was surprised that the Hokage had found him and Tim so easily. They had made sure not to jeopardize their position. So how? Not deterred in the least, Batman glided down by Barbara's side, giving her small glance to make sure she was fine. He then turned his attention towards Naruto, scrutinizing him in every detail for even the slightest sign of hostility. Batman noticed that the man may portray an aloof attitude, but his stance proved otherwise. The Dark Knight noticed at Naruto's stance took the appearance of someone who was just standing, but really he was in a stance that was ready for defense or offense, further proving that this man had been trained well in martial arts. Naruto himself studied the Batman and his family. Looking at them together reminded him of his time with Team 7. Batman acted like the Jonin high ninja sensei, while Batgirl and Robin were his Genin low ninja. From the look I think your concealed face had, I'm guessing you were wondering how I detected you. Naruto said to see if he could get a reaction from the Dark Knight. As High's reputation preceded, Batman showed no reaction or a twitch of an eye, but he decided to answer. Hardly anyone could sense my presence, you're one of the short few who has. I didn't detect your presence, Naruto said in amusement. Now that got Batman to raise his concealed eyebrows in curiosity and confusion. Then how did you sense me and Robin? He asked, not really expecting him to tell him how, but figured he might as well keep him talking to find out more about him. You're good at hiding your presence, but you can't hide the life energy your own body emits, Naruto said a little confidently. Batman was a little surprised the Hokage actually answered and told him how he detected him. My life energy, you say? So I take it that means you're able to sense the presence of all living things that are around you. Most likely insinuating that you either hear the heartbeats or sense the body heat, given the fact that you had your back turned to us the entire time you were talking to Catwoman. Never did your eyes move to our hiding position until we revealed ourselves after you called us out, but then again you could be telepathic and merely sensed our thoughts before calling us out. Naruto gave a small clap at the Dark Knight's deduction. He reminded him of Shikamaru when he analyzed his adversary and tried to find out their abilities with only a small amount of clues. Not bad, yo. You viewed my actions and processed them with the most likely possibilities, although sorry to say that your assumption is incorrect. Batman for some reason wasn't surprised to hear that. After all, Lee knew so little about the Hokage and how his powers worked, so he didn't really have a good estimate of what they are yet. Although Batman did notice something about the Hokage. He looked into his eyes and the small top part of his face that wasn't covered and noticed his skin with how it looked both in color and tightness. He saw that his skin structure made him out to be a teenager, possibly a few years older than Tim, but possibly not older than Barbara herself. Also, don't expect me to give out more info on myself because that's as much as I'll give you. So with that topic out of the way, why would you care to tell me why you're here? As I didn't think it would take all three members of the Bat family to deal with Catwoman, or were you looking me? Naruto asked, even though he pretty much knew the answer already. Both of you really. I came to deal with Catwoman, but instead I also found you here, Batman said while continuing to observe Naruto. Well then I guess you know I'm here now. So is there something you want from me? Naruto said while eyeing all three Gotham heroes. I overheard your conversation with Miss Kyle. While I appreciate the fact that you're trying to convince her to turn sides, that still doesn't mean I trust you. Batman spoke with a glare. Naruto leveled Batman's glare with his own. Sheesh, Selena said that this guy was a gentleman. The guy looks like he's stuck into a permanent glare mode. Kind of reminded Naruto of Konoha's top Anbu interrogator, Ibiki Morino, but then again he had actually seen him laugh and smile while Batman had yet to even give a smirk or grind. Sensing the tension in the air, Naruto decided to lighten the mood. You know, you should really lighten up. When was the last time you actually relaxed? I swear if you glare anymore, your face will be stuck in a permanent frown. Tim and Barbara were surprised at the Hokage's change in demeanor and how he talked to Batman. No one had ever brushed off the bat glare before. Why both had to stifle a laugh that was threatening to come out. If possible, Batman's glare sharpened even further before relenting somewhat. Perhaps a different approach will get me more answers. The Dark Knight thought. Ever since your first appearance in San Francisco I've been keeping close tabs on you. Where exactly did you come from? Batman spoke in fluent Japanese, thanks to his studying of many different foreign languages. This was also a way of testing if the Hokage may have relations to the rumors of his supposed Japanese heritage. Hearing this, Naruto let out a happy grin. Ah, you speak my primary language. I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised considering who you are. But it's nice to speak this language with someone else for once, even if it is with a grouch like you. As for where I'm from, sorry, but I'd rather not divulge that to you yet, since I also don't trust you either. Batman's brow creased in slight confusion. Are you saying that you don't come from Japan? Say heritage despite it being your primary language. It's complicated, but no, I'm not, was Naruto's vague answer. Batman could tell that he wouldn't divulge any more than that, and the man hadn't given him reason to interrogate him yet, so he wouldn't press that subject anymore. Instead he switched topics. From what I've seen in your previous fights and the current stance you have now, it's obvious that you've had intense training in forms of martial arts. Naruto allowed a smile to grace his lips. He was impressed with the Bat's detective skills. It made him wonder if Batman could possibly be able to outsmart even a certain lazy shinobi he knew. Very astute of you to notice, and I can take a gander that you've mastered a high level of martial arts yourself, if your apprentices are anything to go by. Only a master in many forms of martial arts could teach these kids such discipline and skill to be fighting crime. Tim and Barbara were somewhat frustrated that they couldn't understand what the two were chatting about. But both knew it was probably best not to interrupt, so they stayed quiet. Before Batman could continue their conversation, police alarms wailed nearby, catching everyone's attention. When Batman turned back to the Hokage, he was surprised to find him gone with no trace of him anywhere. Now I know how everyone feels when I do that to them. It's actually kind of annoying, Batman idly thought. Batman pulled out his communications link to connect with the police transmissions. It appeared that rumors of Ivy and Harley teaming up were true. They were Ridley held up in an abandoned warehouse where they were holding several civilian hostages. Bruce signaled for Tim and Barbara to follow his lead as they left to Ivy and Harley's location. Naruto Ian while was watching the Bat family begin to move together to the sound of the sirens from a building he was standing upside down on. He decided to stick by and watch what happens in case they may need some help. One thing Naruto had to admit was that things had gotten more interesting. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you all are enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe. Also don't forget to support author of this fanfic. So let's end this video here. Until then, see you in next video.